Hello and welcome back to the Hibs Observer. We're here for a post-match debrief after today's 2-2 draw with Hearts at Tynecastle. No shortage of talking points for myself, Liam Bryce, and I'm here with Patrick McPartlin. No shortage of talking points for us to make our way through. But I suppose the first question is, have you caught your breath after that second half, Patrick?
Just about, yeah. I think it was certainly a bit unexpected from what we'd seen from Hibs, certainly in the first half. And I think at the start of the second half, they came out, they were a little bit more attack-minded. But I think, when Hearts got the second goal, you still thought 25 minutes to play, Hibs aren't coming into this. And then I think really just kind of coming out of nowhere, Élie Youan's first. And then, you barely get your breath back from that, and he scores a second, and then all of a sudden it's gone from, Hibs being down and out to being, can they go on and win this? And I think that's certainly something we've not seen from a Hibs side at Tynecastle in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I suppose the obvious place to start after that is that kind of 2 minutes of absolute, it felt like absolute carnage at times, didn't it? It was, but I think you're right in saying it was the unexpectedness of it, really, because I just, until that point, Hibs hadn't really shown anything to give, I think, anybody, any of the 3,000 in the Hibs end, and anybody, kind of watching elsewhere, any reason to really believe that they were going to pull something like that out of the hat, because, I wouldn't say, Hearts were, battering them, but I think it's fair to say that Hearts were kind of the dominant side for long periods of the game, and then obviously when it goes 2-0 and the kind of manner of the goal as well, it's an especially deflating one. But then obviously we had Montgomery made a couple of changes. He brings on Adam Lafondra, Doidge comes off, and again from the moment that first goal went in, you could just sort of sense a shift. But I mean, it was kind of almost disbelief that when the second one went in so quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, I think especially given, I mean, we've obviously seen a lot of Hibs under Nick Montgomery since he's come in, and I mean, normally they start games very quickly. I thought they were a bit sluggish today. I thought Hearts were by far the better side in the first 45 minutes. Had the goal to show for it, but felt, I mean, what we've kind of seen with Montgomery is that there's not really any need for a plan B. It's more just doing plan A but doing it better. And I think, I mean, he said himself in his post-match remarks that he'd had, he put a few rockets up, a few people at half-time, and it's clearly had the desired effect. I mean, Élie Youan, for one, who was a pretty peripheral figure in the first half. I mean, that's what we're kind of used to seeing with him. He is this sort of mercurial figure, and the sort of constant kind of remarks about him is that if he could do it consistently for 90 minutes, he wouldn't be at Hibs. Again, Montgomery saying that, describing him as a Champions League player if he could put it all together.
Yeah,
and it is
quite a compliment. That
it is, and it's not a ridiculous one. It's not outrageous. He clearly has a lot of talent, and it's just trying to get him to harness it for 90 minutes or consistently is just it must be a bit of a challenge, but it must also be kind of quite a welcome one as well. Just knowing that you've got this player with this potential. Yeah. To come on and change games in the way he did. And especially, I mean, it's not the first time this season. You look at the goal he scored against Luzern in the second leg, and he scores against Wraith Rovers in the Viaplay Cup as well. He's somebody who will score big goals at big moments. You're just never quite sure if he's going to do it. And I think that's having that sort of little bit of uncertainty is what makes him such a potent attacker for Hibs. Hibs fans, the media don't know what he's going to do, then the opposition doesn't know what he's going to do. But yeah, certainly after a pretty nothing first half from him, I think he was a bit over elaborate at times. We were seeing a lot of the Élie Youan we saw last season, where there was a tendency to do more than was necessary. But then, second half he comes out, he's a changed player. Defensively, he's better, and obviously a lot better in the box as well. Twice in 80 seconds or 82 seconds, whatever it was. Yeah,
I know that was quite incredible stuff. I think in terms of pulling it all together, he's obviously, I think he's one of those players I think it's fair to describe him as when he's on it, he's a manager's dream, but when he's not, he's the manager's nightmare almost, because I think the frustration there comes from knowing what he's capable of. and obviously he did show that in the second half, and he's obviously had a pretty, I think, shall we say, clear message from his manager at half time, which basically amounted to, you've got 10 minutes or, you know, you're going to come and you'll be sitting next to me for the rest of the game. You know, how could that be? He's, you know, he has been one of these players who is, he's shown exactly what he's capable of, but then, you know, it's the consistency. Could that, days like today, could, you know, that potentially be like the making of him as a Hibs player?
Could, probably won't. I think he is one of those players.
That honesty.
I think he's one of those players who kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. I think, could he do that for 90 minutes every week? Yeah, he probably could. But I mean, obviously, you know, being a winger, there is that kind of natural inconsistency, if you like. But I just think that he's really kind of.
No.
I think he's. Everyone wants a piece of this. You know, I think he's one of those players who we could put it all together, but for whatever reason, it's not quite there yet. And I think it's quite exciting to think what Nick Montgomery could do with you know, with a player of his ability, his talent, his potential. I mean, he is still a young player, as Montgomery described, I think 23, 24. You know, so there is still that room to sort of fulfill that potential and develop further. And I think it's you know, we've talked before about Sergio Raimundo speaking to him in French to sort of get those instructions over. Certainly don't think whatever Montgomery said to him at halftime would have been in French. I think would have been in English and quite to the point. But you know, I think it is quite exciting to see what this coaching team can do with him. And just, I mean, you know, there's many Hibs players who've scored braces and derbies in recent years. Martin Boyle's one. I think Daryl Horgan's another. Obviously, the winger aspect there, but
yeah,
I think there's so much potential there, and I think in Montgomery and Raimundo, you've got, you know, a really good coaching unit there who can hopefully coax more out of him than has maybe been seen already, and, you know, help him sort of, you know, fulfill that potential.
Yeah, and just, you know, we've touched on the management team there. You know, the first half, it seems like a long time ago now, but I think, you know, just, I think it's kind of important to touch on it because I think it's fair to say it wasn't great for pretty much all of it. I feel like, and again, Nick Montgomery touched on this in his post-match press conference, that he felt, you know, like Hearts were first to a lot of second balls. He felt like they dealt with the emotion of the occasion a bit, or it affected them less. But I think just what was quite evident is Hibs did lack an element of control in that first half. It's hard to remember them really having like an extended period in the Hearts half, maybe towards the end for a couple of minutes. But do you feel that it was, obviously it was Deutsch who started up front? Was it the right setup from the outset, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. It's probably the team I would have picked based on form, based on the last few games. I think the biggest sort of question was possibly would you have put Paul Hanlon in the back instead of Rocky Bushiri? I think that was really the main talking point, I think. But I mean, derbies are a law unto themselves. I think we've seen you can set up in, you know, what you think is the ideal way for the game, but, you know, you can't legislate for the conditions. Obviously, you know, wet weather today, it's slippery underfoot.
Yeah.
You know, the ball was sort of, you could see the water coming off it at times. And yeah, I mean, you're never going to have it your own way in a derby, especially not away from home. So I think you can, you know, with all the will in the world, you can say this is how we want to play. This is, you know, this is what we want to go and do. But, you know, the opposition, especially in a derby, is not going to let you just sit there and do what you want to. And if they do that, then, you know, they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I think Montgomery was right. He talks about the emotion taking over, and I think, you know, there were a few players out there today, and it was their first derby. It was at Tynecastle. It was probably quite a lot riding on it because, you know, Hibs have been on this unbeaten run under Montgomery, and I think the chance to leapfrog Hearts on the table as well if they had won. And just the fact, you know, I mean, they haven't won here at Tynecastle since Boxing Day 2019. It's not the longest run they've had without a win here, but, you know, you imagine that must have been at the back of the mind.
Yeah, it's still a long time.
Um,
It's a long time not to win in a kind of certain fixture, especially one like this, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, you look at the backing they've had from the fans, you look at the connection that the team under Montgomery has with the supporters, and there must have been that sort of like extra little bit of incentive. We've got this really big backing behind us today. Let's try and send them home happy. And I think I certainly think, going by the manager's reactions, I think Montgomery obviously disappointed with the first half performance, but happy with the point. Stephen Naismith disappointed not to have taken all three after being 2-0 up with 25 minutes to go. So I think you can look at it as a point gained for Hibs. But as far as your sort of first experience of the Edinburgh derby goes, from a management point of view, I think Nick Montgomery will be, broadly speaking, quite happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, I wager that he went through every possible range of emotions across the piece. And I suppose if we're being, kind of slightly critical of the first half, then we need to, give credit where it's due for the second half, because it was much improved, wasn't it? And I think they just, to me, and I think Nick Montgomery might have said this himself, it's just they seemed to calm down a bit in the second half. There was a bit, I felt there was a bit more composure, a bit less, emotion in what they were doing. I know they still went, Hibs still went 2-0 down, but I think even they didn't panic for one at that. I mean, because it could have been easy at that point. I think in that kind of hostile environment, as you said, like kind of players were quite evidently, some of them were kind of maybe caught up in the emotion. It could have been easy, I think, to capitulate at that point. It could have, losing the second goal in the manner that they did as well. It could have been easy to just, to go under. But it actually seemed to have the opposite effect. I think Adam Lafondra coming on maybe added, that kind of worldly wisdom that he brings to a football pitch. Do you know what I mean? So I do think he made a difference, and he started to pass the ball after that. There was, and again, the goal did come out of nowhere, but I felt like they were kind of slightly edging into it. Maybe Hearts dropped off a wee bit compared to how they approached it in the first half. But it shows, there seems to be a kind of resilience among that group, because it was a different kind of test for them today, wasn't it? I mean, they've not been 2-0 down since Nick Montgomery's come in. Have not faced that kind of challenge, and have not maybe faced the in terms of the way Hearts played, a team being more aggressive against them. I think we've gotten quite used to the past couple of weeks, teams maybe looking to sit off and frustrate. So it was a different kind of test in so many ways. And I think in terms of what they could do going forward, I think there's got to be a lot to be quite encouraged by in the second period, I would think.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's important to remember that this Hibs team is still effectively a work in progress. And Montgomery's been making a big thing of the fact that he's only really had 2 weeks with his team to work with them on the training ground, and you can see, I think, in every game you can see elements of his coaching coming through. There's been a bit of a suggestion. There's been quite a lot of sort of data, quite a lot of information for the players to take on board, but I think you can see it having an effect. And I think especially at the start, I mean, October's a big month in terms of league games for Hibs. And I think it was important that they got off to a good start, or at least, I mean, even dare I say it, even if they'd been narrowly beaten, but it had been a sort of barnstorming, all hands to the pump performance, then you can have.
There are ways to lose games.
Exactly, yeah. But I think the manner in which they came back in this game, and pushing for a winner, and it should be said, Hearts pushed as well. It came close.
Yeah, it could have went either way, to be fair.
But I think getting them a difficult month, if you like, off to a start like this is probably not the worst way it could have gone. In some ways, almost better than like a convincing 3-0. Just the fact that they've had to fight, they've had to dig deep, they've had to come from behind and rely on individual brilliance, a little bit of good fortune at both ends of the pitch, but also just really buying into what Montgomery's been saying, what the coaching staff have been saying, and this sort of, I think we've talked before in these videos, and we've written about it as well, that there is this sort of newfound sense of belief in this Hibs team. That, I mean, we've seen so many Hibs teams here over the years lose goals like Hearts seconds, where it takes a deflection, or there's such a good deal of sort of fortuity about it for Hearts, that you just think that's such a sucker punch. There's no way they can sort of get off the canvas. But they did that today, not once but twice. And I think in the end, it ended up being more of a sucker punch for Hearts, that not only had Hibs come back once, they've come back twice, and they got in such quick succession. And then sort of set us up for a sort of final 10-15 minutes of absolute mayhem and chaos, which is all you really want from a derby.
Yeah, it was certainly, it was kind of almost turned into a bit of a basketball game towards the end. And just touching on that kind of closing period, I thought substitutions were quite interesting. In fact, Nick Montgomery, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he brought Dylan Levitt on after it went to 2 each.
Yeah, for Jimmy Jeggle.
Exactly. So it's, I mean, having obviously, the momentum is with Hibs at that point, but I think there could be, sometimes managers, they could be tempted to make a change that sort of consolidates. They think like, right, we've got out of jail here. We'll take a point and we'll go up the road with it. I mean, because I think if you look at the changes Hearts made, they took Alex Lowry off. They made, and they brought on another sort of defensive midfielder. So I mean, you could, in another world, Hibs could have maybe did the same after it goes to 2 each. So I think to bring Levitt on, it was a kind of a sign of that under Nick Montgomery, he's not going to. It's going to take maybe a lot for him to take a backward step, if that's what I'm trying to say. It was a substitution that was,
well, I think,
to win the game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we've seen from, I mean, not just Nick Montgomery's Central Coast Mariners team, but like a number of teams in Australia, the mentality seems to be there's no point in settling for a draw when you could get a win. So I think you do quite often see some scorelines from the A-League, and you just think, what's happened there? Like how's it ended up like that? But I mean, it's worth, I think, noting that Hearts did bring on Liam Bryce and George Grant laterally as Stephen Naismith kind of went for it and thought, even though Hearts had been rocked, I think, by the sort of losing the quickfire double, obviously there was still that little bit of belief from Naismith, certainly, that they could still get the 3 points, but it was the way that Montgomery reacted to that by throwing on Levitt. And I suppose as well, like throwing on, he brought on Hanlon for Bashiri as well. I mean, he could have quite easily stuck another centre half on. He had Riley Harbottle on the bench. There was Lewis Stevenson on the bench, who's a man who knows a thing or two about Edinburgh derbies. But to kind of match Hearts in terms of making changes which could help them win the game, and as you mentioned, they already had Lafondra on the park. There wasn't, there was no sort of settling for it. It was, we've come here to win this game, and we're going to give it a bloody good shot, basically. And they did come close. Couple of moments at the end. I think Joe Newell had a chance. Martin Boyle came close, just kind of got the ball stuck under his feet, I think. And again, it's a derby, anything can happen. And we've seen it happen so often that something does happen. And yeah, I think it's quite refreshing to see a manager who thinks, not necessarily they're there for the taking, but this game isn't out of sight yet. We could still get the 3 points. We could go for it. And it's about being bold. It's about having faith and trust in your players to think, if I put these players on, if I sort of keep going with, like we've said before, no plan B, just plan A, but better. If you keep, you keep doing that, keep faith in the players, trust them to do their best to get your result, and it very nearly paid off. Yeah,
I think at half time it could have been tempting to change the setup and to maybe drop somebody else into midfield and maybe try and gain a bit of control that way. But I suppose Montgomery has kind of shown himself to be a manager who's going to stick to what he believes in. He's not going to, I suppose, let like a poor 45 minutes of football, kind of rip up the blueprint that he's been kind of imparting on the players since he came in. And obviously, you're touching on, they've got 2 weeks now we get kind of 2 solid weeks with not all of them, because some guys will be going off on international duty. But I mean, it must be a kind of, a good thing for a manager for the first time to really have that time to work on the things he wants to implement, because it's been kind of, there was a couple of, the St Mirren Cup game, and then it was on to Dundee, and then it's kind of all been about the derby since then. So it is just kind of maybe looking ahead a wee bit. There's a kind of some real challenging games coming up after the international break, but ones to look forward to as well, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see how Montgomery reacts to those, how he sort of sets the team up, because I think one of the things we saw under Lee Johnson was that he was quite kind of full of this, and we're going to go to Celtic Park, we're going to go to Ibrox, we're going to attack, we're not going to sit back. I think the first time he did that, it resulted in a 6-1 victory for Celtic, and it could have been more. It was very comprehensive, and I think Johnson was a little bit kind of cowed by that almost. Thinking he maybe had sort of like belief in his players that if he played a certain way, they could get something from the game. But I mean, Celtic under Ange Postecoglou were just a veritable juggernaut, just fairly unstoppable. Certainly at home when players were on song, but. The second time they went to Celtic Park last season, for instance, much more pragmatic, tactical approach from Johnson, and did lose Élie Youan in the first half, but they took the leads and they actually held Celtic, until fairly late on, where I think that man advantage probably made a difference. And then you look at not Boxing Day, sorry, just after the World Cup last year when they went to Ibrox, which I think was Michael Beale's first game in charge actually. And it was a different approach than what we've maybe seen from Hibs sides at Ibrox in the past. It was there was a bit of pragmatism, but there was also the sort of like we can use these threats, we can really sort of hurt them. And I think that he's certainly going to.
Sorry, guys.
It's all right. Cheers.
I think that he's certainly you've certainly seen a lot from this game today to think about for these games. I think he'll be very eager to test himself against two of Scotland's sort of more elite teams. And I think I don't see him making vast changes, to be honest. I think his big thing is that he knows his sort of strongest 11 or a strongest 11, because we've seen there's two or three sort of slots that are almost interchangeable. So I think he knows his what a strong starting team looks like. I think he knows how to win games like this. Certainly with Central Coast Mariners, there were many times where they were the underdogs, and I think they've come out on top. And you look at him taking them from essentially bottom of the league, and almost I think some of the supporters said, virtually a laughingstock. And then it's one of the smallest budgets in the league. We've gone over this before, but he turns them into title winners effectively. And I just think it's exciting to see what he can do with this team. You can see improvements week on week, game on game. And I just think, you're pointing out he's got more time to work with them before what's going to be two sort of really big tests again. But I think from having an unbeaten start so far and to come back the way they did against St Mirren in the Viaplay Cup to progress to the semi-finals, to come back the way they did today, and obviously come close to nicking it. And I think the stat being thrown around is something like it's over 3.5 years since Hibs last came back from 2 goals down in a league game. So that's not to be sniffed at either.
No, absolutely not. You held that together very well there.
Thank you.
A true professional. Listen, folks, I think we better leave it there before we end up getting locked in here for the evening. But you can get a full reaction to the game on the Hibs Observer website. We've got Nick Montgomery's full press conference up there for you, and there'll be further reaction from Tynecastle at 10:30 p.m. tonight. But thanks as always for joining us, and we will see you again soon.